Good morning. Good morning. What's happening this morning? The energy is slowly coming. Let it come, let it come. How was last night for everybody? How's Gimpa food treating you?
We miss a lot of things.
Huh?
What? We miss a lot of things.
Who can volunteer to tell me what happened and what we learned yesterday? Malik, you want to do that?
Taking us through the reason for which we are here. The fact that the two thematic areas of the training will be skills and knowledge. The skills which we already have, but which the program targets to sharpen, and then the knowledge which we have, which has to be enhanced. Then we reviewed people's stories that have been done by individuals. And as we reviewed the stories, we identified some lapses with those stories, things that we have done, sources that we have contacted to enhance the stories. Then we had presentations from Dr. Sajai and Mohammed. We were here for Mohammed's presentation. Dr. Ajai's presentation was technical. I think that I would defer to my senior colleague.
Yes, he took us through the technicalities, the formation of hydrocarbon and how the extraction process takes place, how water is separated, or how water, mud, and then the oil itself as well as gas is separated. And also the other aspect of the platforms that are used basically for drilling and prospecting, and how to obtain a seismic data to follow for production.
Okay. So what are some of the key story ideas that we could say from yesterday? From yesterday's two presentations, what are some of the stories that we can follow up on? What are some of the ideas that we can tease from those two presentations that were made yesterday?
I think key for many of us was the emphasis on the fact that the laws we have may be beautiful, they may be well done, but they do not, the laws in and of themselves cannot give us the results that we desire, which we all look for. There is therefore the need for a policing of the system and the processes in order to ensure that the laws achieve the objectives for which they were promulgated in the first place.
So what really is the central idea?
The central idea is the laws we have will not give us the results. The laws have to be enforced. And civil society, journalists, and all interested persons must ensure that the authorities enforce the laws.
So, I mean, I'm just trying to find from your angle, from a journalism angle, what will be the story? Really?
For example, we have the law that says that provision must be made for participation by local people. Dr. Ajayi made the point clearly that even though that is the case, the local people must have the capacity in order to take advantage of the law. The local people must not go to bed believing that once the law provides that the oil companies give them certain concessions, it will come automatically.
I'm still trying to make sure we have a story. It's there, right? So, for example, it's a capacity to deliver. So, a story idea could be is our Ghanaian professionals and Ghanaian businesses ready to take advantage of the local content law, for example?
My central story, the central idea of my story is this. If the local content law is to achieve its objectives. The local people must themselves change attitude towards quality and time. And he made the point clear. He says, we don't respect time, we don't respect quality. But these are things that are important to the players in the industry. If you have to make supplies within a certain given time, you must keep to the time. We cannot say that, okay,
so
if you have
for
to
example,
deliver yesterday.
What would be the sources for the story, for example? Who will you speak to buttress your point that one, because if I understand you, what you're saying is, as it is, we don't have fair respect for time and quality, and so we may not be able to take full advantage of the law, right? Or am I? So who will be the sources to back a story like this?
I think currently the local people who are providing services.
So businesses that provide services to the. So the sources are suppliers. I'll just go.
And then the oil companies. Let's find out what their views are about the local business people that they are dealing with. They believe that they meet the standards, they respect time, they have concerns about how they manage those two key things, time and quality.
Anybody else some ideas on the sources to make this story better? Because there's two perspectives. One is the supplier will say, but maybe they give us a short time to deliver this, and they expect us to do magic. And then the guy will say, but in this business, oil companies, in this business, things are about fastness and how fast you can deliver it. So there are two sides to the story, but there could be a third hand to this story, the bigger picture.
I think that what government itself, having passed the law, what government is then doing to ensure that its people benefit from the law.
So government agencies responsible for this.
But the oil companies don't use tricks. The tricks you just alluded to navigate around the law.
But also maybe, I mean, institutions like Dr. J's institution, people that build capacity, so they can give us a perspective of what the situation is now, that maybe there's a shortfall of X amount of skilled people that can provide so and so services. And so to get to the right, we need to train X amount of people. So I think another source, or maybe institutions that train or build capacity around oil and gas. Okay, so that's a good story. So the central story really is on Kenya is not ready to take advantage of the local community. And we will then use, our story will focus on ability to deliver timeliness, quality, using the sources that we've identified, suppliers, oil companies, government agencies, and educational institutions. Okay, any other story from yesterday?
Yes.
I think you have to add the box back, that's in the suppliers.
Yes, so suppliers, cost back.
And then the Petroleum Commission.
What is the central, where does?
Petroleum Commission is actually the regulator. Box back members submit to Petroleum Commission.
Okay. Yes.
I'll go to revenue management, where Dr. J said we all have to come together to police the laws that guides the management of the natural resource.
Yeah, go on.
Yes.
I'm trying to find a story. So you're talking about policing of
The effectiveness of the oil rig, like how they manage it. He said we should all come together to police the management of it. So as we being the journalists and the businessmen involved, so as how to manage the oil revenue to benefit all. I think he said this when I was asked the question concerning how the revenue is being used and corruption, whether the resources seem scarce or whatever. He said it's because of how the revenue is being managed. But if we all police it and they manage it well, then it wouldn't seem a case or something.
I mean, to take this further, what would be, for example, the kind of people that we can speak to make the story richer?
Well, we can speak to the transparency people, 80.
So civil society groups that work on oil and gas.
Yes.
Well,
We can also speak to CSOs.
that's the first. CSOs and added EITIs.
But here the local government can speak to them because of the royalties involved that they pay to the local government, so we can speak to the local government.
And there's something central to the central argument of your story. So there must be some other group that I think is missing. So the story is what will be your headline for your story? What Kenyans should demand more accountability, or what's the?
But I just two story headlines. I'm still thinking about it. Maybe the effectiveness, policing the laws of resource revenue management, or I could also say lifting the resource case with a question mark, and then whatever you said and the findings.
Sounds very academic, not journalistic. Lifting the resource level. Okay, maybe one more story idea from yesterday, and we'll talk about today. Madam.
Efficiency with which the revenue is being used. It's from I got it from Adams. Yes, that he said that we are not spending our revenue efficiently, and he cited the amount of money that was allocated to several projects in 2013. And he called for a better management or investment of our revenue. So I think that's.
So basically, your article will question whether the revenues are actually being used right. It's a good story. And then what? So who will be our sources for a story like this?
My first source will be Mr. Adam himself.
So he's from the CSO group.
And then Piak. Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
And the Minister of Finance.
And you also how to an economic analyst, to
I think
his or her side of the
economic analyst. And for background, what will be so independent economic analyst? What might be good for background also would be to compare what pertains in other countries, similar to Ghana, on how they are using their funds. And so that can be either economic, meaning that you do your own research and you back that up, or if you can have a source from Norway or whatever, who can then say, yeah, these are the priority areas and this is what we focus on and so on. But I think
would it be possible to also contact the priority area that the minister is supposed to provide the money? For instance, education or roads. Would it be necessary for you to contact those ministries to see if indeed?
Well, that is taking it a bit further.
Okay.
I mean, you're digging deeper into the story. Say that, okay, education versus health versus infrastructure. What do you, as an educationist, feel is the best? Of course, you will say education that is the best. Yeah.
There is one story also that I would like to come out with, and the issue of diversification. about what Mr. Amin said about putting all our attention or concentrating in one sector and leaving the sectors that were those that were there before the oil, the exploration of the oil. Because this morning on the breakfast show, the fisheries, what they call them, Fisheries Alliance, they came out with a lot of issues concerning the oil line and how the EPA and the oil companies did not did the environmental impact assessments well. And then with a lot of technicalities, they said they have, I heard it today, that they shoot something, the sound, that will move by sound. And the oil companies have something they shoot or something, it makes a lot of sound to test whether there's an oil at a particular place. I don't know much about it. And they said that could also be part of the reason why the oil is dying. So the issue of, it came out that Ghana was spot about 4.5% of fish, but it has reduced since the oil panned.
That cannot solely be
On the issue
to oil find and
that is what they said. So now if you do
Kofi is the name, not say.
on the issue of EPA, and she debunked the allegation that they were caused by oil and gas. She said whales are dying in other parts of the world. It is a global phenomenon.
But you see, I haven't followed this story carefully, but I am tempted to also ask myself why all of a sudden the numbers have increased. And I don't know the answer, but I don't fully buy your point. But this is for debate.
We have to look at it from how many rigs do we have offshore? We have the Transocean rig that is about 60 kilometers, 60 nautical miles offshore, and it's stationary. And the second rig facility we have is the FPSO Pacific, which is also stationary. And there is currently no search for any seismic data or whatever.
So there's no exploration going on?
There's no exploration going on. Everybody has
What
finished.
what are they doing?
Hess has finished. They are now looking for money to start development. So, and if you look at the whales, they wash ashore very much rotten. If the whale died, how do you call it, 60 nautical miles offshore, it should wash ashore, not that much rotten. And if you want to attribute it to the oil and gas activity, so we have so much up and down. We didn't get so much. When you look at the factors that contribute to the death of these things by science, something I've forgotten, it has to do mostly with illegal fishing. If they are patrolling offshore, if they are doing things that they are not supposed to do.
But they've been patrolling before the oil.
Let me come in. He said they will. He said that like what he said. He said they will wash like offshore very rotten. He said it was not supposed to be that. That's Mr. Mantel or whatever. He said it was not. It's not supposed to be that.
They made this calculation based on a certain price. If that price goes wrong,
throws everything off.
it's another point that illustrates it. So at $65, they project that in 2011, everybody will get $20. If they were to share the money, if they were to share Ghana's oil money among ourselves, so oil and gas revenues per citizen, if they said, okay, let's just in Bufia, everybody will get $20 in 2011, 2014 will get 50. So actually, it would be good to check now what that would be. Okay, and this is just to show. I mean, government spend on people. It's not to say that we are sharing the money, but in terms of development. So if you can spend $50 per person in 2014 based on your projection, then obviously you can do so more projects now. But if you got your calculation wrong in terms of pricing, and it ends up that you are getting $20 per person, how can you? The things you said you will do, you can't do, for the simple reason that your projection is wrong. So it's just another slide illustrating price of oil in relation to development and planning. Okay. The point I want to make here is about interest rates. So this is linked to a Chinese loan, for example, and what we've borrowed quite a lot. Two bonds in recent times, and so on and so forth. You have less revenue. Your production can also fall, which is linked to what he mentioned. But you borrowed a lot. Okay? And assuming that your interest rates begin to rise on the debt that you have. One of the big stories in recent times, which I didn't think a lot of people talked about, is about this new bond that we went to raise. The 750 million, I think 80% of it was to pay debt too. You know that?
Yeah.
It's to refinance an old debt.
People actually spoke about it.
It is not for any new investment. I think only 20% is for a new investment. You understand? You owe the bank 100 Ghana at Barclays, and then you can't pay. So you went to GT Bank and borrowed to come and pay. That bond, 80% of that bond really, I can't remember. But it's huge. It's called refinancing. They said, well, to refinance an existing debt. And I think that debt is the, what is that before debt to
Yeah, 750.
Yeah, bond. I don't know. So they couldn't pay. So the trend, that's what I'm saying. That's why your point about you are not worried. You see, there's a trajectory, you know, and all this is based on a certain projection that Hess will come on board and then that oil field. We're all optimistic by nature, you know. We expect more money by just the way it is, you know. But anyway, your interest rates begin to rise, and then you begin to fall into your planning. This is I mentioned this earlier. The budget, you're going to be budget shortfalls. So you are faced with difficult choices. Should we put the money, because the election is coming, should we do more roads? Or should we stick the plan on building schools? Or should we, you know, then they begin to find shortcuts, you know, governments by nature. They build the road up to this place just for the votes, and they don't continue the other side, and they continue the road on the other side, you know, and so on. But yes, if you don't plan properly, and you have budget shortfalls, you'll be faced with difficult choices. You might begin to lose control of the economy. And if you don't take care, from a political perspective, that is what people begin to go on the streets and so on and so forth. This is this debt trap thing is where I don't know whether we are heading there, but it's illustrates the point I was trying to raise earlier about. By their very nature, countries that have oil tend to go ahead. Primarily because, look, oil is a commodity that everybody wants. Just because we got oil, that's why we got it 3 billion. It's just because we have oil. Ghana has been there since long. They never gave us 3 billion. you get me? So the appetite for debt from oil economies like us is high. But you could easily fall into this buy now, pay later business. And so the question is, you say it's not a bad thing. Okay, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, it's very a bad thing. No, it's not.
So, okay, why is it not?
I think what is a bad thing is what to use what you borrow for. If you borrow and you invest in productive areas, and the investment is such that it regenerates what he calls
multiplier.
The big borrowed English that he spoke. Multiply effect. I think that borrowing cannot be said to be.
So the advice here is government can borrow, but
invest in GDA and Suba.
Yeah, they shouldn't pay 15 million just like that.
I plant trees. Where is that one? This man will plant trees and flats will consume them. You confirm.
They should spend the money on improving living conditions and offer people a better future. We all know this. The question is that most governments don't do this, as we talk about. I think I've delivered this point about because you have oil, you can get access to credit, and you can get access to cheap credit, and so on. So this is where we want to differentiate ourselves, and I'll give an example after this slide of some countries where if you don't use the money wisely, what can happen? Because here we know we can have elephant projects all over the place. For example, they can decide to build something that has no multiplier effects.
Even a presidential palace.
Maybe they can say they want to build another presidential palace because this one is not nice.
Another one.
So it's our job as journalists to make sure that the temptation is not there. Because the money is there, they don't start spending it on huge example, like what I was saying, just for political patronage. So, you can go and do some project somewhere, and everybody knows the project will not work, but you just done it because you get votes there. But it's all against debt. That's the problem. It's against debt that somebody will pay tomorrow. So we should avoid short-term thinking. Mention all that. This is a classic example they give on Azerbaijan. The guy had so much money, he decided that every country needs an icon. Like Ghana, our icon is what? What's Accra's icon? Like the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Accra, what's ours? What? Independence. What's it called? No, not the square, the one in the middle. Arch, right? The arch is the other one. So this is the square. Anyway, that's that. So Azerbaijan wanted, it is a small East European country, they found oil and they wanted to show that they also have an icon. So this is what they decided to do with their money. And they spent a lot of money to build this. It got ripped. The pole got bent in 2011. This is like an extreme situation, but it's just to illustrate that you can put money into things just to glorify your ego because the cash is there. And the reason why we are putting this in the presentation is we should be able to question some of the investments that governments are making now. And yes, it's nice and fancy to have some things, but really, will they necessitate? Yeah, will they necessitate? To summarize, the risk is this. Oil, you have oil, you start borrowing heavily, the income falls because the price goes down. Your cost hasn't changed. A typical example is Ghana now. Single spine. It will be difficult for any government to undo it. The cost will always be there. But the revenues may go down. And if they do, what happens?
Borrow to pay.
Exactly. And then we continue. So that's your point to the next slide, the vicious cycle. You borrow more. And because now you're borrowing more, your rate of interest also goes up. Because bankers are like that. Now it means that you're more risky. So they lend you at the higher rate.
And you're going closer to HIPIC.
Yeah. And then you get to Greece and Italy. That's essentially that's the European story. They borrowed forever, thinking that the fund will never end. The fund has ended. So I can go on and on and on, but I think you get my bigger point about the risk and reward. I want to kind of end the slide here. What you can do with the money, those are and some of the risks to avoid. Have I communicated that kind of clearly in a way that it makes sense? Sure? Okay. Any questions then? Because I want to be 50 minutes past this time. I don't want to spend this time. Any questions?
My question is that as you were taking us through all this, I was just asking myself, we don't have politicians and our economists and our ministers of finance know all these things, because this seems like it's fine to apply, but how come they cannot go by some of these let's say, what should I call it? The positive
the reward thing, yeah?
Yeah. Why? How come we cannot apply it, and then we see ourselves going down with this thing, and still there seems to be nothing.
of interest. And like you said, once you find a resource, you have a lot of people coming to you with all kinds of fanciful projects and ideas. So people are coming in, brokering deals, presenting you with all kinds of stuff, financing options, this and that, all those fancy things are coming up to you.
It's for you to decide.
My answer is simple. The World Bank study that says Africa's problem of what's the answer? Leadership.
So I think here the benchmark revenue in 2014 was estimated at 584 million.
Actual price, between what price?
No, they didn't, but they have it will put that 70% of 70%.
500 and what? What's the amount? Let me write it.
584. Yeah, the benchmark revenue estimated. Yeah, that's about 1.285.66 million Ghana.
Billion.
Yeah, billion Ghana. Yeah, and then the 1.285.66.
Again, it's important. Politicians, depending on what you stand, where do you go? Really, 1.2 billion. If that's what you're
899.96 of the benchmark revenue be allocated to the annual budgetary funding amount, yeah, and 30% for allocated for GP, yeah.
Bring inside.
Pressing is on fire, we have breaks.
It's important to break the cash break.
Yeah. You can bring in your coffee or survive the 10 hours. We'll quickly just remind ourselves of what investigative journalism is all about, what news analysis is all about, what you require to do a very good investigative piece and analytical piece, and let's see if there are some issues that are worth investigating. This time, the area of oil and gas as well as the minerals sector. Now, I guess we're all very much aware of what investigative piece is. It is going beyond the usual thing where you go to report on an event or just write a straight story and maybe get 2 or 3 more sources to the story. This is why we want to pick up an issue that is not clear, an issue that probably is being partially covered deliberately or accidentally, that you want to dig deep and come out with the real facts of the case. And in our case, a lot of things are partially not clear, either somebody's interest is being protected or somebody's not telling the truth. So you want to go deeper and investigate and see whether there's some crime being committed, whether some corruption is going on, or some corporate organization has an interest they are trying to protect against that of the state, and all of that. And again, it's useful that we remind ourselves that investigative piece is not gossip. Where you go and somebody's private issue, you want to just delve into it to disgrace the person. If it's of no public interest, really, why do you want to waste our years? But we do that very often. So you see, for one whole week, it's an issue that everybody's talking about and it has no bearing on our welfare as a country. It's just petty gossip that is good thing. Because we're a small country with several radio stations, and the radio stations essentially broadcast what every other person is doing. So we don't have diversified discussion. If it is Chachu, bet that 99% of media houses will talk about Chachu. Wherever you go, it's Chachu. So if something is even of less importance, because one station or two pick it up, everybody does, and so it assumes some national importance. But really, it's of little relevance to us. But what we need to remind ourselves basically that journalism is really about investigation. We shouldn't actually be thinking of trying to say this story is
phrase story, this is an investigative piece. Really, every basic story should have an element of investigation in it. That's what will come out or make our story very